Sure, your novel's pretty good, but is it next level good? Oh crap, I only brought one level. So I guess this is just the first level. What exactly is it that moves a novel from being good to great? And how can a writer move their novel to an even higher level of greatness? There are many very important things that separate a good novel from a great novel, and we're going to talk about a few of them today. This list is by no means exhaustive, so if you have something that could move a novel to the next level, please share it in the comments down below. All right, the first thing that will move your novel to the next level: tracking and managing reader attention. Specifically, managing where the reader's attention is at any given moment. I heard a film director talk once about how every time they change a camera setup for a scene, so every time there's a cut and a change of camera angle, they try to make it so that wherever the focal point of the scene before is, that focal point ends up being the same focal point after the cut, so after the camera angle changes. This kind of idea is very common in visual arts like painting and drawing. In those mediums, the creator is always thinking about where on a piece the viewer's eyes get drawn to, and you can tell the difference between an amateur and a pro painter or drawer artist by how well they manage the eye movement of someone who's looking at their piece of work. Now, doing this in a novel is a little bit different, but you still need to pay attention to where your reader's attention is being drawn to. Every sentence of your novel is going to pull the reader's attention to something. Great novels are intentional about how they manage reader attention. The author always understands what the reader is focused on at any given moment, and they manage that with intention to guide the reader through the story, having them look at and pay attention to the things that they want them to pay attention to. The order that information appears happens in a very deliberate way. How the author leads the reader through conversations, or how they describe the room a character just walked into. It's all done as part of this dance of managing and directing reader attention. Great novels are not just a dumping of plot beats and information and events, but rather a carefully guided journey across the story. Thing number two that separates good novels from great novels, or moves a novel to another level, whatever way I'm framing this in this video. Anyway, creating an atmosphere. The best novels that I've read all have their own unique feeling to them. This can be derived from a combination of mood, tone, voice, maybe even like theme and motifs. It might purely be built around the setting, it might be a feeling created around the tone of the story, it might be how the characters behave. There's all sorts of different things that can contribute to the atmosphere of a piece of writing. I'm calling this atmosphere because I think it goes beyond any of those elements that I mentioned before, and it's a bit more of a nebulous topic than something even like mood or theme. It's really just a feeling that gets created in the reader as they read the work, which is why I think it's so hard to pull off. Joe Abercrombie, I think, is one of the better examples of creating this sort of atmosphere. A lot of his world building is very subtle and mostly conveyed through how the characters discuss different parts of the world and different groups of people and those sorts of things. It's very rarely directly stated in the narrative. Of course, we're talking about Joe Abercrombie, so it's usually bad people having prejudiced conversations about other people, but nevertheless, it gets the job done. Abercrombie's writing is also extremely vivid from a sensory standpoint, which also contributes to this atmospheric feeling. Delivering factual information will never lead to atmospheric writing. It has to evoke emotion. Another thing that Abercrombie does is he uses characters to drive the atmosphere rather than just describing it through the setting. This is common in a lot of novels that have a strong atmosphere, and is probably the best way and probably the most concrete piece of advice that I can give around creating a strong atmosphere. When you can see how the setting has etched itself onto the characters of a novel, that's when you get into a much stronger atmospheric feeling. A character is always going to be the product of the system that created them, and when we see the effects of that system on the character, it always conveys the world better. Your characters should be living, breathing, cautionary examples of what comes out of breathing the atmosphere of your novel. Atmosphere is an incredibly tricky thing to do because it's entirely based on the feelings and the reactions that the reader is going to have to your story. To create a really good atmosphere, you have to cover every part of your writing with elements that contribute to this atmospheric feeling, and that's an incredibly difficult thing to do, which is why it's something that only a really great novel can do really well. And the last thing that will separate a great novel from a good novel or bring it to the next level, I apparently haven't decided how I'm framing this video. Anyway, make the novel simpler. The quality of your writing is strongly correlated to the ease of comprehending your writing, and simpler writing is almost always more comprehensible. A great novel often emerges when you tear down the barriers between the story and the reader. There's this feeling among some writers that good writing needs to be complex and fancy. Most of us go through thesaurus gripping phases or have specific $3 words that we love to use. A lot of us measure the quality of our writing by the complexity of language and words that we use. We watch endless hours of these blowhards on YouTube yammering on and on about esoteric, pointless, complexity-increasing crap that probably actually doesn't contribute to making a better novel. Some people strive to make writing that requires a 140-point IQ in order to understand, and see this as a sign of quality. But a strong argument could be made that the opposite is actually true. The mark of a good writer is the ability to convey complex ideas in such a simple, understandable, and straightforward way that almost anyone can get their heads around them. Producing writing that's comprehensible at a third grade reading level is arguably harder than producing writing that's comprehensible at a 12th grade reading level. The complexity of your writing is ultimately a barrier to the reader engaging with your story. The more work they need to do to understand your story, the more difficult it is to engage with it. The easier your writing is to understand, the more information and the more emotion can be conveyed through it because the reader is spending less of their brain power on just understanding what the heck the writing is trying to tell them, and they're able to fully experience the writer because there's less barriers between them and the story. People like to bitch and moan about books like Twilight or 50 Shades of Grey being so popular, but the fact that so many people were able to connect to those stories is a sign that their authors were able to convey ideas in a simple and broadly comprehensible way. You can sit high atop your academic high horse and belittle popular fiction like this as trash that is an affront to the craft, but at the end of the day, you need to measure fiction by the impacts it has on its readers, and a lot of popular, pulpy, trashy books have a big impact, in part because of their broad appeal. I think a great novel isn't necessarily achieved by adding more to it, but rather by tearing stuff away. Great novels aren't the ones that reach the highest peaks of technical brilliance, but rather the ones with the shallowest moats and the lowest walls. You can write something really, really great, but if there are too many barriers to experiencing that greatness, no one will be able to experience it. I think if you have to put a lot of technical and complexity barriers around your novel, it could be a sign that those barriers aren't actually blocking anything, that you're actually lacking true substance, that you're too focused on trying to impress people that you're never going to make an impression. Speaking of impressions, I'm not going to end this video with any impressions because nobody wants to see that, and that's not related to anything. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more stuff like this, please remember to subscribe to my channel. I'd love to know what you think about all of this stuff in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. See if I can get the cat to reappear. Come on, walk back up. There we go.